Hello, my name is Dr. Brian Raid, and I'm a naturopathic doctor, and this is part 3 of my meat cleanse video diary, sharing more information about this 4-month meat cleanse slash carnivore diet that I've been working with for that period of time. So in the last video, I talked about some of the changes that I've noticed with my own health, some of these favorable changes. So I mentioned how my teeth always feel like I just got out of the dentist, which is lovely. I mentioned how my mental clarity and energy levels feel better than they did by about 10%, even though they were doing quite well from the get-go. I can't remember what else I mentioned because it was too many days ago for me to remember. Maybe my mental clarity needs to get even better. And so a couple of other things that I wanted to mention in terms of changes that I've seen with being on the diet. So one of the things that's been interesting and I think kind of exciting is I find that I'm able to, I seem to have better exercise performance, specifically around doing resistance training. For years now, I've been following the program set out in this book called Body by Science. It's a book I highly recommend, and essentially it involves doing exercise, doing resistance training for certain body parts to failure. Basically lifting as much weight, like, doing bicep curls with as much weight as I can tolerate to get, to do about, like, say 6 to 8 reps, and the very last rep is just all the way to failure, and trying to do that, in a fairly short time window. And so doing that for, different muscle groups. So it's a fairly it's a bit of an intense strength training regimen, I suppose, would be a good way to put it. And so what I've found is that in the 4 months since I've been doing this meat cleanse, I find that I'm able to lift more weight, which is nice. I've been doing this regimen, as I said, for several years with the Body by Science program, and I have seen strength gains over time. But as happens with resistance training, I saw years ago, significant gains, and then it kind of evens out and you see maybe smaller gains over time. So what I found is that the amount of weight I've been able to increase, or the number of repetitions I've been able to increase, has gone up quite a bit faster than it did based on the trajectory that I was seeing prior to doing the meat cleanse. So there does seem to be some degree of increased sports performance from that perspective. I've also found that my my running has also improved to some extent too, and I feel like that is in part due to the diet as well. That's been a nice little fringe benefit that I've seen with doing this meat cleanse for the last 4 months. There are probably some other little changes that I've seen with this diet, but those are the ones I mentioned last time, and the new one that I mentioned today are probably the main things that I've seen. So what I'd like to spend the rest of the video talking about is just a really, I think, very exciting outcome that one of my other patients doing this, or one of my patients has seen doing this diet. So this patient, I'd been working with a patient for several years, had seen certainly improvements in overall So the patient was having issues with digestive issues, a lot of gas and bloating, constipation, and those symptoms had been going on for a very, very long time. And working with the patient, the bowels are moving better by working with magnesium to help keep bowel flow going. We had tested for SIBO, it was positive for SIBO. Patient was working with diet changes and herbs to help address that. And the patient's digestion had probably improved like about 85% of the way, doing a lot better. But the really challenging and frustrating thing was that despite doing a lot better overall, like bowels moving every day or twice a day with magnesium, digestive symptoms being markedly reduced, the patient had hit a plateau, and the patient couldn't seem to get off the magnesium or get off the diet. Herbs didn't, after a while, it didn't really seem to matter if the patient was on that or not. And so it was a little frustrating for the patient because they're so happy to feel so much better, but we just couldn't seem to get them off of the magnesium or the diet. So granted, there were some other things that we, in the tool bag that we hadn't pursued, but the patient had heard about the carnivore diet slash meat cleanse, was excited to give it a try. And so the patient went on the carnivore diet, and what was really quite, I think, fantastic is that in a very short period of time, relatively speaking, in about 6 weeks, the patient was able to cut their magnesium dose down about 66%. So going from consuming 10 capsules of magnesium a day down to approximately 4 capsules of magnesium per day. So like a really, so I guess a 60% drop. Pretty easy math on that one. So it's notable reduction in magnesium, and the patient also reported that the residual gas and bloating symptoms were gone. That's one of the really interesting things with the carnivore diet. When you're not eating carbs, then there's really not a whole lot for those bacteria in the intestinal tract to make gas from. So gas and bloating is typically dramatically reduced, if not completely eradicated, by following the carnivore diet, which is quite nice for those folks who are suffering from a lot of indigestive symptoms. And then the other thing that was really exciting rather, is that after 2 months of the patient doing the carnivore diet, we retested their SIBO test, their lactulose breath test, and for the first time, the levels were completely normal. So the patient previously, originally had done the SIBO test, was positive for SIBO. We retested after treatment, and the levels had come down a little bit, but were still quite high. Treated for a while longer with various herbs and whatnot, levels still quite high. And it's like, well, it just was quite mystifying. So we were treating for biofilms and this and that, just couldn't seem to get the levels of the SIBO down. So what was really impressive to me was that by going on the carnivore diet for only 2 months, the SIBO results were completely normalized. And that does make sense for reasons that maybe I'll get into in a subsequent video, because this one's starting to drag on a little bit time-wise, but that was really quite impressive. So with the patient, just really thrilled that the digestive symptoms were virtually completely eliminated. SIBO seems to be eliminated. Magnesium dose is way down. So I can't say that patient case is completely done yet, because we don't know, patient still needs magnesium. We don't know how things are going to go once the patient's sticking with the diet, because they're just feeling so good and they want to stick with it. It seems that for some of us, the carnivore diet's a little bit, or the meat cleanse is a little bit addictive, as evidenced by the fact that I was only planning to do it for a month, and then here I am 4 months in. But anyway, so hopefully we see further and further improvements, and as the patient reintroduces non-carnivorous foods, then they won't see a regression of symptoms. So can't say the patient's 100% out of the woods, but at least in the short term, or in the initial phases of that protocol, it seems to be really quite encouraging and impressive. So thank you to those of you who have been sharing some of your experiences with doing a meat cleanse / carnivore diet. Anyone who has additional experiences they'd like to share, I'd be happy to hear about them, because again, as I mentioned in previous videos, I'm really interested in this, and it's exciting to hear what other people are experiencing, because not that many people proportionately are doing this. I know lots of people are doing it and have done it worldwide, but compared to other diets and interventions, it's not the most common one out there, but probably I think it's gaining some additional popularity over time. So I hope this video was interesting, and again, just any questions or comments, just post them below.